Sometimes love stories don't play out like your typical love story, especially when the male lead is dealing with family stressors and personal trauma. But those are the stories that are the most gripping. This week we get to meet the author of Just Such a Story, one that blends romance with something you don't often see: accountability. Welcome to the third interview of Author Awareness April. Hey, welcome to The Right Way, where we talk book recs, creative writing tips, and especially this month, author interviews. I have a great new guest I'm looking forward to introducing you to, but before I do that, I have a couple of announcements for you. First up, I'll be down at DJ's Collectibles in downtown Hanford for Free Comic Book Day. I'll have a table out in front of the shop where I'll be signing and selling copies of all of my books. As of the recording of this episode, I've gotten word from the Visalia Books and Brews event, and I'll be at the event held at 707 West Murray in downtown Visalia on Saturday, May 16th. Tickets are available from the link down in the video description, but be warned that this is an adults-only event. Second, today, April 18th, is the Poetry Open Mic event at the Hanford Library's temporary location. Now, if you're local, come on and support community poets from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Lastly, starting June 1st, I am starting a new giveaway. It's free to sign up, and the prize is 3 free promo codes for the audiobook edition of Midnight Playground through Audible. I will announce the winner at the beginning of July in a new live stream. So, with all of that said, let's get to this week's interview. I connected with this week's interviewee through Instagram. She saw my post about needing authors for the segment, and I got her signed up. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Public Health Nutrition with minors in Sociology and Creative Writing from UNC Chapel Hill, and she's finishing a Master's of Public Policy at UC Riverside this year. She's got a great book. So let me introduce you to Paula Omokhomion. Paula, thank you for joining me on the show. Please tell me about yourself and what it is that you write.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Paula. I'm currently I go to school. I'm a master's student. I study public policy, but on the side, I also write. I've been writing since I was 13 because I went to boarding school, and it was a form of entertainment. I first started writing like romance, because I usually would watch that genre. But over time, I like to write challenging characters. Write about characters that are not like the usual that we see in mainstream literature. I like having main characters that are morally ambiguous, that have not a very straight perspective or black and white perspective on things, because I feel like in that way we can also challenge the reader to confront, characters in literature that are not usually depicted in literature.
Tell me about your book.
So, The Shape of the Sun, on the surface, is like a romance, right? But that's actually not the main part of the book. As I said before, I like to write very interesting characters. So it's about a doctor. He's an Indian doctor, and he lives in the United Kingdom. And he comes back to India for an event, and he meets up with this girl who he was classmates with, and it's all about them falling in love. But there's also the part where he has to fight for his family inheritance with his half brother. And as we read through the book, we start to see, oh, who is the actual hero, who is the villain, because you see the villain and you see like the way they are being treated and the things they went through, and you're like, oh, even this so-called hero might not be as perfect as, we will imagine the main character to be. It's a romance, but it's also about like character, like development, and also shows like a family inheritance going on as a main backdrop.
That is really cool. That's really cool. And
Thank
you
you.
said that you got into writing because you went to a boarding school as a way to kind
Yes,
of keep yourself entertained.
yes, yes.
What drew you to writing narrative fiction? Why not poetry or some other genre?
Okay, I want to say I have never like actually tried writing poetry before. So, I mean, I wouldn't know. I do know like the type of fiction I grew up reading was actually prose. So possibly I think that was most likely the reason why that was my first entry into fiction, because that was the like sort of fiction I was very familiar with reading as a reader. And in boarding school, like you're always bored and there's like nothing to do. So I started writing as a form of entertainment for me and my friends. It was actually like a dare. Someone was like, "Oh, like let's see who can finish, writing something in a week." And then I started writing and I gave it to others to read, and they actually had so many good comments. And that's how I realized, oh, I could actually write. Like, I was good at this. And so when I got into college, I went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I did a minor in creative writing fiction. And my undergraduate honors thesis was actually in fiction. My major was nutrition, but I decided to do my honors thesis in fiction. And I kept on getting like very good feedback from like all these esteemed, writers and professors and even my peers. And I think that culture of being in an environment where I write and I get a lot of like good feedback and like reinforcement has really supported me in keeping to this sort of like fiction.
What has been one of the biggest challenges that you have faced in
Mhm.
the creation of your book?
Yeah. One thing, personally, like growing up, I grew up watching a lot of like Hollywood, Western movies and things like that. So my first book actually had such characters. But as I grew up and became more aware of like social issues and the world, I always want to incorporate that in my writing, you know, and that involves me like writing about people from other places too, or writing about my own African heritage. And I see a lot of books, other authors that do this, not trying to cast shade on anyone. But there's also this element of writing that so many people take for granted, is that you need to do research on it. You need to make sure that you're writing something that is factual, true, not conflated, and you need to make sure that you're respecting the characters because they are situated in a real real setting.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that I feel like is very challenging, because writing this book, I grew up also watching a lot of Indian shows too. So, but I knew that was not going to be the same as that was not going to carry me along to write a book. That was not enough like arsenal for me to write this book and write it in a way that I was really comfortable and happy with. So that involved me like also like talking to people like I've never met. I'll go online and I'll be like, oh, I'm writing a book, and you come from this part of the world, like how is the experience and things. I'll also like go and read news articles too, to make sure that I'm also like writing about them. Like the time I was writing this book, there was an incident, like because my setting was in India, and there was an incident that was so familiar to like Nigeria, where my family is from, where there was like an accident in the hospital, which was due to negligence. And that was a social issue. We can see like infrastructural like negligence going on due to like no regulation of all these type of things. And that was something I also like put into the book. So I think one thing is trying to entertain others, but another thing is also trying to educate others. And I think there's a challenge that many people still like grapple with, because many people will like want to go the easy route and just entertain without like considering the fact that it's also important for books to also have messages too.
If you were to give any advice to other would-be authors out there, what advice would you give them?
Okay, just from the creative writing process, I do like to have an outline. So I think it's always good practice to have an outline. Like, you know your characters, you can jot down like their background, flesh them out, and an outline of what you're going to write. And I find as I go, things change. But I also make sure to annotate that outline and say, oh, like this has changed here, this has not changed here, this is how this has evolved too. And another thing is try to always make your characters like realistic as much as possible. Like you said, like Mary Sue characters, there are a lot of that, and I think literature should move forward past that, honestly. I feel like people should try to make their characters like more realistic, and also I feel like this is something very like technical. There are many times when I'm writing a book, and I think the hardest part of being a writer is when your character is doing something. Like when they're moving in the scene, like when they're cooking or jogging or dancing. Like that's the hard part. Like it's easy to write someone sitting down and talking, but the hard part is when they're moving in the space, right? And there are times when you're like, oh, I think this scene would be better if this character is moving.
Mm-hmm.
If they're static, that doesn't mean the scene will be bad technically, but it could be better, right? If they're moving. So I think I don't go through people's heads, so I don't know what they think when they're writing. But I think when I'm writing and I have to decide between those two things, I always try to make them move because I feel like I'm challenging myself.
I think that's great advice. Yeah. So we're coming up to the end of the interview, Paula.
Mhm.
How can people connect with you and how can they get copies of your book?
Well, actually, this book is unusual because I don't know if you know this site called Wattpad. Wattpad. So that's when I started writing it. And I wrote it over the course of like 7 months, 6 to 7 months every day, which was very interesting because I was in school. And by the time I put it in like Word, it was a long document. So I decided, oh, I was just going to make it like I was not going to make hard copies, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It was only going to be digital copies, so you can get it like on Amazon, on Kobo, on Apple Books, like all the major platforms. And I mean, my Instagram is always there to contact me at Paula Onohi, and my website too is on my profile. So you can get all the information about me and where to get my books. Like they're on all major platforms too. So it's a digital copy. And also I also like to think of it like I'm also like working towards helping the environment, less paper.
Awesome. Well, Paula, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for being my guest.
Of course. Thank you so much, Garrett, for inviting me. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please click like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications on new videos just like this one. A big thank you to my guest, Paula Omokhomion. If you'd like to connect with her or get copies of her work or become a channel supporter, you can find all of those links down in the video description. Make sure to join me next week for my last interview featuring David Ajluni, and keep on writing the right way.